Imagine standing on a wind-swept ridge in the Scottish Highlands. You're looking at a fortress built 2,000 years ago, but as you reach out to touch the stone, you realize something is wrong. This isn't cold, rough granite. It's smooth, it's dark, it's glass. Across the hills of Scotland, there are over 50 ancient forts where the massive stone walls haven't just collapsed, they've melted. To turn these stones into liquid glass, you need temperatures exceeding 1100 degrees Celsius. That's hotter than a volcanic eruption. And these fires didn't just happen once, they were sustained for days, turning entire fortresses into glowing molten slag. But here's the problem. The Iron Age tribes who lived here didn't have the technology to reach these temperatures, not even close. So, was this a catastrophic accident? An ancient weapon of mass destruction? Or is there something even more chilling hidden in the chemical signature of the glass? For centuries, these vitrified forts were dismissed as local myths, legends of dragon fire or giants' forges. But when geologists finally arrived with microscopes and chemical reagents, the myth became a nightmare. The stones aren't just scorched, they're fused. Bubbles of gas are trapped inside the rock, frozen in time at the exact moment the granite turned to liquid. This is vitrification, the process of turning sand or stone into glass. In the modern world, we use industrial blast furnaces to achieve this. In the ancient world, they had wood fires and leather bellows. But here's where the puzzle pieces stop fitting. If you build a massive bonfire against a stone wall, the outside of the rock might crack, it might blacken, but it will never, ever melt into a solid glassy block. To do that, you need a directed heat. You need a thermal trap. Think about the scale of this. These walls are 10 feet thick. To melt them all the way through, you would need enough timber to deforest an entire county. Why would an ancient tribe spend months gathering wood just to burn their own home to the ground? The first clue to the mystery was found in the debris. Investigators noticed that the melting only happened on the inside of the walls. This led to the siege theory. Imagine an invading army piling brushwood against the gates, lighting a fire so intense it accidentally liquefied the fortress. It's a clean explanation, simple, logical. But then, scientists did something the historians hated. They tried to recreate it. They built a replica wall. They packed it with dry wood. They lit the fuse. The fire roared for hours. The heat was unbearable. But when the embers died down, the stones were barely affected. A few cracks, a bit of soot, but zero glass. The experiment failed. It proved that a simple siege fire isn't enough to melt Scotland. There was a missing ingredient, a hidden catalyst that the ancients knew about, but we've forgotten. Open loop. Keep this in mind. At one site, Dunmaxniakin, the stones didn't just melt, they were chemically altered at a molecular level that suggests the heat was coming from within the rocks themselves. But here is where everything we thought was wrong. For 200 years, we assumed vitrification was the result of a disaster, a fire that went out of control. But at the 4-minute mark of our investigation, we have to face the butcher's twist. Recent laser scanning of the fort foundations reveals a terrifying truth. The vitrification wasn't an accident, it was the design. The builders intentionally layered the stone walls with sacrificial timber beams on the inside of the structure. They built a stone oven into the very heart of their defenses. But why? Why would you build a fortress that is literally designed to become a furnace? The old theory was that melting the stone made the wall stronger, like a giant seamless weld. But engineering tests show the opposite. Glass is brittle. One hit from a battering ram and a vitrified wall shatters like a window. By vitrifying the walls, the builders actually made their forts weaker. This changes everything. If it wasn't for strength, and it wasn't an accident, then the melting of the Scottish forts wasn't a construction project, it was a ritual of destruction. Imagine the scene. A tribe has been defeated. Their king is dead. The victors don't just want to take the fort, they want to erase it. They want to turn the very symbol of their enemy's power into a glowing, hellish monument of defeat. They pack the walls with thousands of tons of wood. They add bone, they add tallow. They create a chemical flux, a substance that lowers the melting point of the stone. It wasn't just a fire, it was a 72-hour engineering feat of pure hatred. The chemical signatures in the glass show traces of high alkali materials. This is the smoking gun. They were adding specific minerals to the fire to make the stone melt faster. But here's the weird part. Some of these forts are in locations so remote there isn't enough wood in miles to perform such a feat. Even today, transporting that much fuel would require a fleet of trucks. How did an ancient people mobilize an industrial-scale logistics chain just to melt a wall in the middle of nowhere? So what are the vitrified forts? They aren't just ruins. They're the scars of an ancient forgotten war. A war so brutal that killing the enemy wasn't enough. You had to kill the landscape. You had to melt the very mountains they stood upon. Today, these sites remain silent, dark, glassy sentinels overlooking the locks. When you touch that glass, you aren't just touching rock. You are touching a moment of 2,000-year-old fury. The mystery of the Scottish glass forts reminds us that the Stone Age wasn't just about survival. It was about mastery over the elements, a mastery so profound that they could turn granite into liquid jade and fortresses into ghosts. We might have the LiDAR and the laser scanners, but 2,000 years ago, we still haven't figured out how to light a fire that hot. Maybe some secrets are better left buried in the glass.